PhD. So I came back here, and I did my PhD in developmental psychology at a university called Cornell. And then after my PhD, I went to a place called National Institute of Mental Health. So that's right outside of Washington, D.C. And I did something called postdoctoral training. So after you get PhD, so after you guys get bachelor, and if you want to study more, then you can go to master's program or PhD program. And I thought that would be enough education for me, but apparently it is not. So I spent additional 3 years, that's called postdoctoral training, do more research and more training. After that, I came here, accepted a job here, and now I'm a faculty in developmental psychology here. So that's a little introduction about me. So let me see, what would be you guys are a little bit relatively big group, so maybe just kind of, you guys tell me which country you're from, different countries where you're from. Does that sound good? So yes, which country? Anybody from?
Here, from Saudi Arabia. Yeah, this name represents us.
Okay. Saudi Arabia? Saudi Arabia, yes. And everybody's from Saudi Arabia?
China.
China?
Yeah.
Anywhere else? Where?
Peru.
Peru, yes. Where? Another country?
Teachers from America.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. Is it all like 3 countries? Yes? Okay, good. So, not only that I asked your countries just because I wanted to get a better sense about you guys, but where you're from is very relevant to what we're talking about today. So I'm going to start my lecture, and again, this is it's really like a snapshot of the field. So if you're more interested in this topic, more than welcome to contact me. So my email address is there. And also I want to tell you, so because it's a brief lecture, I'm not like taking very snapshots of different studies, and it happened to be that a lot of studies in psychology, especially the topic regarding to culture, is between North American culture, so like U.S. and Canada, comparing that culture with Eastern Asia, so China and Japan and South Korea. So I'm just saying this, try not to cause any misunderstanding that because I'm South Korea, I pick all the studies, majority of the studies that's related to from that region. It's just happened that a lot of like cultural studies related to cultural psychology happen to be done by comparing the North American culture and East Asian culture. However, there are like more new studies trying to understand other parts of in the world, Latin America, Middle Eastern areas. So I'm just seeking for your understanding that like, I couldn't cover all the cultures. It happened that the focus is that the comparison between those 2 cultures. So let me start with the introduction. So I thought I'm going to talk about what's culture, and you hear about culture all the time, but there's a definition. So I'm going to talk about the definition of the culture here a little bit, and then talk about a little bit of how culture influences our childhood, so that it influences the way that we behave, the way that we think, the way that we understand things. And the next big topic in cultural psychology, something relevant to you, is that people get very confused about themselves once they're exposed to new culture. So we're going to talk about how the self-concepts different between 2 cultures or different cultures. And the last, that I'm going to talk about some studies about what happened when people move to a new culture. Alright, so big topic in psychology is this relationship between the nature and nurture. What's more important or how they are related to each other. So there are a lot of people who believe that nature plays very, very important role. The example of nature would be your gene, something that you're born with, something that you are predisposed, something that you're inherited from your parents. And some extreme that people think that that's what determines everything about you, the way you think, your personality, what you like, what you do well. However, also there's a lot of people saying that the experience that you have or the environment you're exposed to play a very important role to decide who you are. So that's nurture, the social and cultural influences. It's just kind of living your daily life. You keep exposed to different things in your environment. So what typically people saying is that, to really understand who you are, we have to understand both nature and nurture. And that's been the focus a lot in psychology and other fields as well as biology, sociology. A lot of different fields will talk about this to try to understand human. But today we're going to talk more about the kind of nurture side of studies, because we're going to talk about the culture and different kind of culture influences. So you can kind of think of every kind of environment that you're exposed to. So starting from like a physical environment, that sometimes you're exposed to a room that's very broad and large window that makes you actually feel kind of happy. Sometimes you have to live in a kind of apartment. There's so crowded and so noisy that you can't concentrate at all. So you can kind of imagine that, that kind of physical environment itself already influencing you and your mood and your thinking. There's culture beliefs that we're going to talk about more, and then there's a family and peers, and neighbors and communities, and even the schools and government. All this environment have influence on you, and all this environment has a cultural aspect. So when we talk about the culture, we're not just talking about America versus Saudi Arabia or Peru. We're talking about cultures that we're exposed to from all these kind of different levels. So there are many, many different ways to define culture, but one definition is that the culture is the kind of information that we share and you learn from other people. And the culture is like the crucial way for us to transferring our knowledge to the next generation. So that's one reason why we're so motivated to share this information to each other when you think about it from evolutionary point of view. This cultural knowledge is sometimes critically related to your survival, how you can survive, how you can protect yourself. Want to be friendly to other people and have to know how you can be friendly to other people so you can have friends. Sometimes that's just like purely kind of cultural things that you maybe think about, but that's actually critically related to your survival. So that's when people talk about the importance of the culture. So we develop a different kind of tools at how we can share the cultural knowledge. So language being unique to us and being very critical in terms of sharing this information to each other. But we sometimes come up with different rituals, songs, different tools that we develop to be able to share the information. And what is cultural psychology? So the cultural psychology, the idea of comparing different culture and understanding different culture is not new. But the concept of cultural psychology is relatively new. And the kind of idea or the realizations that people started to have that unless we study culture in differences between people from different cultures, unless we have that understanding, we can't truly understand a human being. So psychology is about trying to understand human being, right? And then we starting to recognize that culture play such important role for so many different areas. And we can also recognize our own ethnocentrism, meaning that we tend to think things from our own perspective, and that can actually create a lot of biases or preconceptions. So, trying to judge people from the other culture by comparing them to our own culture. So, one way to kind of avoid or remove ourselves from this as much as we can is that we do scientific research and trying to understand how the culture influences our behaviors and thinking. So that's kind of why the cultural psychology developed. So I'm going to briefly talk about how we're influenced by culture through our childhood, so that we have a little bit of background that how the culture plays roles. So this is actually a very famous figure that we use in psychology, trying to kind of understand how complex our environment is and how we're constantly interacting with the environment. So, this is a little child, but you can imagine this as yourself as well. And you are interacting with people at home, with your parents and your siblings. Then you're interacting with your peers and teachers in school. And then your neighborhood friends and adults there. And then also religious settings. So that's actually a kind of small circle of our environment that's kind of directly interacting with us. And then there's an environment that we may not have a direct contact, but still have a very big influences, is the social media and local industries, school board, local government, parents' workplaces. So if your parents working in a place is very, very, very stressful, your parents not going to be very happy. So they're going to come back home and they're going to be more likely to yell at you. So that's kind of one way that how the parents' workplace may not directly interacting with you, but it does have significant influences. And then you can kind of go on even beyond that, that the society and the ideologies and beliefs your society has have influences on all these different parts of the society, then it will influence actually yourself and the way you interact with other people. So that's kind of the environment and culture and the developmental context. So, when we talk about culture in different kind of countries, something that we cannot avoid talking about is language. And language is one of actually very, very interesting area that how we're the only species come up with this very, very sophisticated tools to communicate to each other and also different across different cultures. And it seems to have sensitive periods. So the sensitive periods is that when it's the period the experience seems to have a profound impact on a certain areas. So this is a little chart showing that what it is like for language to have a sensitive period. So this is English proficiency score. So you may have actually seen this before. But this is also people age of arrival in U.S.